You know, this episode was just so good, it makes me want to sing. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody, and it is time for yet another review of Star Trek Lower Decks, this time Season 3, Episode 7, A Mathematically Perfect Redemption. And already you can tell, possibly guess by the title, that just even talking about the concept of this episode is going to be a spoiler. So, mild, thank you for that, Car. Anywho, so mild spoiler right off the bat, and then I'll get into further spoilers in just a minute. But just know the concept of this episode is itself a spoiler, because this was entirely an episode from Peanut Hamper's perspective. Yes, the one-off character from the Season 1 finale of Lower Decks, the exocomp that we all love to hate, returns this episode, and it focuses on her so much so that while we do get our main Lower Decker characters towards the end of this episode, they are pretty much in the background of this entire thing. This is fully and totally Peanut Hamper's episode, and I have to say, I really enjoyed pretty much all of this. I thought I was going to dislike it, that I was going to be a little bit put off by it, or just not enjoy it as soon as I knew what the concept of the episode was. But as we got further and further into it, and I saw the story that they were doing, I just had so much fun with it, and just so many of the one-off jokes that they do just had me hysterically laughing. Like, there's one here that I have been quoting with my friend for a while since we saw this episode, because I got a screener of this a few weeks in advance, and so we've just been quoting one line from it over and over and over again to each other. It just goes to show how powerful this episode is. One thing that I will say, we'll talk about this more in the spoiler-filled section, is there is a twist halfway or near the end of this episode that I initially did not like. Like, as it was happening, I was like, oh, I don't know if I enjoy this. But as the episode kept going and how it wraps up, it makes it work for me. I don't know if I would have liked it as much as if they had played this sort of twist straight. I feel like I might have enjoyed that just as much as what I end up getting here. I would have felt a little bit in that sort of more positive Star Trek vein. But that being said, I don't dislike what they gave me here. It's just one of those, like, both story options I think are totally legitimate. Just one is just sort of like my loving Lower Decks for its more like earnest positivity, being like, oh, I kind of would have preferred that necessarily, but I don't think it's a wrong one. I think it just comes down to taste, and my like earnestly optimistic heart might have preferred the one way, but every so often it's sometimes nice to go the other way. It's nice to not always do the same earnest optimistic thing, and sometimes give us a little bit of twist on that to make those other moments shine more. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a taste thing in terms of like the twist of this episode, rather than it being good or bad either way. I think maybe my personal taste might have been erring more on the other direction. But that being said, I don't think it's a wrong thing to do with the bait and switch. But to talk about all of that, we will have to get more into spoilers. So if you have not seen the episode yet, we're going to get into them right now. So we start off the episode with, I believe, our first ever previously on Lower Decks that we've gotten so far. I don't believe we've got any previously ons before. Maybe in the season premiere this year with the cliffhangers from season 2, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So either the first or second previously on, because we get to see the ending of the season 1 finale, just the last little scene there, and then we get to see the season 1 finale from Peanut Hamper's perspective in space, with her being like, yeah, I knew they were gonna die, I knew that was gonna happen, and then the Titan showing up and then her getting forgotten, was kind of sad to see, like the kind of like very quiet and lonely Lower Decks theme song. We don't get our standard title sequence here. And yeah, it was just her just being on her own. It was kind of a little bit sad to see. Then we get Peanut Hamper in space a few months or a while later, and we see, like, she's kind of rightfully pissed off and, like, making decent arguments. Like, look, they wanted me to sacrifice myself on the first day. Like, what the hell? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get you being a dick, but, like, that was a dick thing to do. But I can kind of understand that, and, like, not willing to sacrifice yourself right on the first day. And then I also like she made a Soph, basically a Wilson, that she had made from just parts. And then she also made a sort of ship for herself out of all the, like, destroyed elements of the Packlet ships. And so she escapes these scavengers right at the top of the episode and, like, gets flung off onto a planet, which is just kind of funny to see. It's just basically, like, barely holding that whole ship together. But then she lands on this owl planet called Areolus, I believe is how they say it, which Boimler tries to say it later on in the episode, and I think they were trying to make an areola joke, which I think is kind of funny, this nice little wordplay bit there. But she lands on this owl planet, essentially, and it appears to be a sort of primitive pre-warp civilization, though that is a a bit of a mistake to think so. So it's a non-warp civilization, let's say. And yeah, she just starts exploring it, and Peanut Hamper just has this holier than thou, like, oh, these backwater people sort of attitude. And you can kind of already see where the storyline's going to go, where like she starts to warm up to these people. And they have a fear of her because she is a machine life form. And so it starts to create this like organic versus machine life form storyline. And there's just so many like great one-off jokes here with like Peanut Hamper saying like, ah, fuck. And then she's like, oh, that's just a thing us space people say. He's like, ah, yes, fuck indeed, which was great. And then we also meet Rauda, who is the village leader's son, who is like the village bad boy, as she said. And yeah, she's able to replicate things as well with her like internal replicator, which has everyone sort of spooked. And then I love when we cut to Peanut Hamper sort of in her room, just replicating tennis balls and complaining about things. I laughed so hard, just the tennis balls just getting thrown at the wall, and Rauda coming in and being like, how can you live in such filth? Was just great, again, setting up that confrontation between the two of them. And then I loved the joke where Peanut Hamper is just sort of being shown around. She's like, does everything on this planet have wings? And he's like, yeah, of course. And he's like, that's actually not what the rest of the quadrant is like. Come on. And I love that when she's like working with him, he protects her from a sky snake. And that one joke where she says, well, why do you bother calling it a sky snake? If everyone had wings, wouldn't it just be a snake here? Which I thought was like, yeah, it's a good point. I thought that was funny. And then we just get more scenes of Peanut Hamper being kind of a pretentious asshole and looking down at everybody. And then she manages to save the village leader, who is bitten by a sky snake, and she's able to give him vitamins and medicine and say, hey, like, science is a good thing. And this sort of like changing Rauda's mind a little bit. And then we just start to see Peanut Hamper growing a little bit. She's starting to help out. She's becoming part of the community. She's helping guys' fecal matter get better, which is gross, but also kind of funny. But then we get to my favorite bit of the entire episode, which is Rauda and Peanut Hamper going off and him being like, I need to show you something. And he... the best line where it's like, oh, Peanut Hamper, being with you just makes me want to sing. And she's like, yes, sing to me. And he goes, Caw-caw! And she's like, oh, it scared the shit out of me. That's the line I've been quoting with my friend all the time. And just like, I could sing you. And I just go, Caw-caw! And my friend just like, oh, God, scared the shit. It's just great. I loved that line so much. And then them going and like having like a romantic moment. And this was also great, being like, oh, our bodies are so different. I just want to kiss your nozzle. And she's like, you got different parts too. Clearly looking at his junk going on. And then they basically have sex, and they like his wings make this heart behind the waterfall, which is really beautiful. Like the animation looked gorgeous there. Also, something else, speaking of the technical parts of stuff, the music of throughout this episode was also really wonderful. Like Chris Westlake, the composer of Lower Decks, always does a great job on the composing side of this show. But in particular, I was just noticing some of the music that he had going throughout the background of this episode. And I was like, damn, this is some gorgeous, gorgeous music you have. So I just took a notice of that throughout all of this. But anyways, all that looked really beautiful and was hilarious. I loved it. But then we learn that Rauda takes her to show her this cave system, and it appears that like actually this civilization is not a pre-warp civilization, but you could even say a post-warp civilization, that they used to have warp in their ancestors, and they ended up in a lot of wars and decided to give it all up. And Peanut Hamper's like, oh, I guess I haven't been breaking the Prime Directive this entire time, which is something I had been thinking about the entire episode, about her possibly doing that. And again, she's not Starfleet. She doesn't have to adhere to their rules, I guess, anymore. But yeah, no, so she realizes that, and they have sex right there, and him being like, yeah, I used to distrust machines, but now I trust you, so maybe this was all wrong. We can use these machines. But then we jump forward several months, and we see that we're getting Rauda and Peanut Hamper's wedding. And I love that Peanut Hamper had the beak on her nozzle. That was such a great visual gag. I adored that. But then they start to get attacked by Dracmani scavengers who have showed up and are going to try and take the ships that are there. And so Peanut Hamper calls for Starfleet help and tries to get them to come and help them. But obviously that may not actually be the case. She may not be able to save them in time. And then she does exactly what she should have done in the season 1 finale. She gets a ship, and she goes and attacks the scavenger's ship, and does it exactly the same way that Shax and Rutherford did in the season 1 finale, and saves everybody and manages to escape just in time for the Cerritos to show up. And I love that Tenny was sort of like, oh, Peanut Hamper's saving the day, and like her getting so excited about it. And ultimately she does kind of save the day, and it all seems like everything's going well. It's like, yeah, no, I trying to do the right thing, and I need to go back to Starfleet. And Rauda's like, oh, can I come with you? And I'm like, oh, this is a very sweet ending. We're gonna get Rauda on the ship, and Peanut Hamper's back, and she's redeemed herself. And this kind of was what I was talking about before. Like, this is the ending. It's like, oh, my sweet, earnest, like Starfleet loving heart kind of wants that ending. But then there is, of course, a twist. because it turns out the Trickmani stole one of the bigger ships, and they revealed that Peanut Hamper was the one that called them there to steal this stuff, and that Peanut Hamper had engineered this entire situation in order to get back into the good graces of Starfleet and trick everybody, because she still thinks down on all these people, and that she hasn't actually changed at all, and still looks down on organic life. And Rauda is deeply upset by this, as well he should be, and then, like, freaking Peanut Hamper shaming him and being like, oh, yeah, this asshole, he cries all the time. He cries after we do it. I'm like, dang it, Peanut Hamper. Wow, way to be a jerk. And eventually, Rauda does steal one of these ships and manages to save everybody. And I got really concerned. I was like, no, Rauda, well, please, no, don't die. I thought Rauda was going to die there. And this is where I say I ultimately came back on it, because I was a little bit disappointed. It's like, oh, I kind of wanted Peanut Hamper to be redeemed. And I was kind of a little bit sad about that, but then it ultimately became a Rauda story and allowing Rauda to have agency. And that's where I ultimately came back around and being like, no, I actually do really like this story. So, like I said, I probably, again, my earnest heart does want Peanut Hamper to earn redemption. That's what I wanted in my soul. But what we were given is also very, very good. So I do think it's like, it comes down less to, like, oh, this is a bad story or anything. It's just more taste. And yes, I like characters getting redeemed, but that being said, it is still a great story for Rauda, who's kind of like, yeah, Peanut Hamper, go screw yourself, and we're not going to worry about being fearful of technology anymore, and that it is ultimately a learning experience for him to not be afraid of technology and accept it as part of their lives, but also be wary of it as well, because Peanut Hamper is sort of still a manipulative jerk. So ultimately, I came about to loving this story and loving Rauda's arc for it. And then Peanut Hamper being like, all right, I'm peace, screw you guys, but ultimately not getting able to get away. And Shax just takes out her sort of calling the Borg. He's like, you're all going to get assimilated. See how you like being organic then. But then she gets thrown into the same prison that we got to see Agamus from last season thrown into. If you don't remember, Agamus was the machine from season 2 who was played by Jeffrey Combs, who was the machine that was trying to take over all the different planets and stuff and pit Mariner and Boimler against each other.
You regret this? I will conquer this lab, and then I will take over the Federation!
So it was very cool to see Jeffrey Combs show back up here, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to be building here, because we now have a team up between Peanut Hamper and Agamus that might possibly down the road lead us to a bigger confrontation. So very excited to see what's being built in the background there. And has me kind of curious, because there's a bunch of little, like, ongoing storylines here with Lower Decks. So I'm curious to see how it's all going to come to a head at some point this season. So yeah, no, very exciting to see a team between Peanut Hamper and Agamus. And like I said, overall, this was a great episode. While, again, earnest me wants the earnest redemption of Peanut Hamper, I do love the build-up for Peanut Hamper as a potential behind-the-scenes villain going forward, as well as the Rauda storyline, and then just so many of the one-off jokes between this with, like, the owl people and the sky snakes and the cawing of it all just made me die. And it was a big risk for the show to sort of do something that involved so little of our main characters and just focus on Peanut Hamper. But ultimately, I really loved it. This became one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. And I just adored it. Like, this was absolutely hysterical and wonderful and just a great time. And I love it when Lower Decks sort of takes risks like this and does something different. So yeah, excited to see what we have going forward. But this was another excellently strong episode. Excellently strong? That makes sense, yeah. Another strong episode of Lower Decks. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. What did you think of a mathematically perfect redemption? I'd love to hear all that down in the comments. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on my other reviews of She-Hulk, Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, and the House of the Dragon. But beyond all of that, I hope you all live long and prosper.